Krozak watched the thermal footage again. It was always the same: Nova 7, Outer Rim Colony. Civilian sector in flames. Consortium drones strafing the sky. Buildings collapsing. People scattering. Then the anomaly. A human. Alone. Wounded. Dragging a child in one arm, firing a battered pulse rifle with the other. Blood soaked the heat map. Even after a direct hit landed meters away, the figure didn't break stride. Didn't flinch. Krozak narrowed his 4 primary eyes and paused the recording. The data said the colony had a 0.4% chance of survival. The footage told a different story. Behind him, Chancellor Rax Tholer stood motionless, 12 stalk eyes blinking in complex rhythm. "You see it too, I presume?" Rax asked, his voice echoing through the dim chamber. "Statistical aberration," Krozak said, but his tone lacked conviction. "No. Something older. The humans have become narrative disruptors. They act outside logic. They force adaptation through chaos. Then kill them." "We've tried," Rax said flatly. 5 assassination squads. No bodies recovered. 1 operant defected. Another returned with a story about a mongoose, a toaster, and an orbital mine. Krozak turned. "You want me to fix this? I want you to understand them." He scoffed. "You fear them." Rax didn't blink. "I fear their potential. And the artifact on Glacius Prime must not reach them." Krozak frowned. "Precursor technology? That's myth." "Then recover it," Rax said. "Before they rewrite history." Krozak watched the footage one last time. The human lifted the child onto their back, shouted something at a burning sky, and sprinted toward the ruins, grinning. Oblivion's elbow was not an official diplomatic hub. It was an accident of architecture, an asteroid station cobbled together by smugglers and scavengers on the edge of mapped space. Now, it served as the neutral ground for an unofficial negotiation. And humanity had sent its least official representative. Captain Lennox West strolled into the chamber like he owned it. Long coat, unshaven jaw, and an air of permanent amusement. He sat without asking, kicked his boots up onto the console, and winked. Across from him, Rax Tholer's entire posture tensed. "You are Earth's negotiator?" the Galari diplomat asked, translator blinking furiously. "I'm a negotiator, a tactician, and, apparently, an emergency comedian," West said. "Also very good at poker." "You guys play poker?" "No." "Then you're already losing." Rax tapped the table, projecting charts. "Your species refuses integration. You deploy non-military assets in war zones. You turned a consortium research station into a soup kitchen and broadcast human cooking shows in 5 unlicensed languages. You're welcome. This is not diplomacy. This is improvisation," West replied. "Big difference. We offered alliance. And we offered you a goat." "Mountain goat," West clarified. "The creature caused 4 critical system failures. It was the hooves. Should have upgraded your floor paneling." Rax's mandibles twitched. "You are a virus in our algorithms." West leaned in. "That's the nicest thing anyone's called me this week." Alarms blared. Rax turned to the console. "Unscheduled intrusion, Sector 9. West checked his comm link. "Right on time." "What have you done?" "Me?" West stood. "Nothing." "But my crew? They're probably halfway to your data cores by now." "You'll regret this," Rax hissed. West walked to the door, pausing only to say, "Maybe. But regret makes great poetry." Then he was gone. A goat bleated in the corridor. Rax howled. The Newton's paradox wasn't built for stealth. It just happened to be crewed by people who didn't believe in permission. Captain Chen stood at the helm, her face lit by data displays. Around her, a squad of specialists recruited not for obedience, but for invention. Echo Squad. To her left, Singh monitored neural resonance outputs. To her right, Petrov polished a plasma cannon like it owed him money. Behind her, Rodriguez lounged in the maintenance crawlspace with a sandwich and 3 grenades. And Kim? Kim was in the hold, rewiring the medbay into a makeshift resonance chamber. The artifact pulsed in its container, gold and blue, flickering like memory made solid. Singh looked up. It's waking up. Then we'd better reach Glacius fast, Chen said. Before someone else tries to kill the future. We have no idea what's down there, Petrov said. Exactly, Chen replied. That's why we go. Rodriguez leaned out of the hatch. Can I bring the mongoose again? No mongoose. 1 mongoose. Rodriguez. Just for moral support. Chen sighed. Suit up. We land in 10. Glacius Prime was a graveyard of frost. The planet's surface shimmered with static ice storms and glacial ridgelines sharper than obsidian. Beneath it lay black rock, a world cracked by tectonic nightmares and stitched together by ancient engineering that predated written language. The Newton's paradox touched down in the shadow of a crescent canyon. The winds howled like wolves with metal lungs, and even through insulated suits, Echo Squad felt the cold vibrate in their bones. Atmosphere's thin, Kim said, watching her suit's vitals. Breathable for about 3 sarcastic comments, then you pass out. Rodriguez coughed. Better make M count. They moved as a unit, silent, smooth, but never without tension. The vault was buried half a kilometer beneath the ice, locked inside what scans called a non-Euclidean structure. Which, in layman's terms, meant it shouldn't exist. The scans kept changing shape. Dimensions refused to stay stable. So, Petrov said, a standard Tuesday. Singh carried the artifact in a sealed cradle, its glow now steady and low-pitched, like a heart waiting for a second beat. Their path led through collapsed tunnels and ancient bones. Not literal skeletons, but architecture, fused spires and fallen pylons half melted into stone, like a cathedral swallowed by tectonic fury. Radiation levels are rising, Kim warned. Something's active down here. No power signature, Singh replied. This place is running on memory. At the final corridor, the air changed. No more wind. No more dust. Silence. Ahead, a spherical door. Seamless. Reflective. Embedded in the rock like an eye frozen shut. Rodriguez, Chen said. He stepped forward with a scanner and a shrug. Knock knock. As he touched the door, the artifact in Singh's hands vibrated, once, then thrummed like a tuning fork. The door felt it. And opened. Not outward. Not inward. It folded. Unfolded. Disappeared. Revealing the vault. A chamber the size of a city plaza, shaped like the inside of a seed. Smooth walls glowed with concentric glyphs. At the center, another orb, larger than the first, rotating in zero gravity. It pulsed in rhythm with their breaths. Sing, Chen whispered. He stepped forward, raised the relay artifact. The resonance surged. A hum. A memory. A signal. The walls lit up, not with light, but with moments. Visions. A world of silver grass and cities grown from living stone. Towering thought spires that shimmered with empathy. Seas that reflected the memories of the beings who swam in them. Beings not human, not even mammalian, but filled with intent. They're not showing us their world, Singh said. They're showing us how they saw ours, Kim whispered. And then, as if on cue, the vault shifted. The images changed. Now they showed humans. Not in conquest, but in confusion. Struggle. Reinvention. They showed a boy learning to build radios from scrap. A doctor treating an enemy soldier. A grandmother planting a tree on poisoned ground. They showed us how we survive. How we refuse not to. Chen knelt beside the main orb. This isn't a weapon. No, Singh said. It's a library. A living one. One that seeds. It doesn't give knowledge. It offers empathy. That's why the consortium wanted it, Petrov growled. Weaponize the signal. Control the story. They can't, Singh said. Not unless we show them how. Chen looked back at her team. And didn't speak. She touched the orb. It pulsed once. And began to broadcast. In the shadows above the vault, Krozak of the Vraks watched. His orders had been clear. Recover the artifact. Eliminate the humans. But orders no longer made sense. He had seen the footage. He had seen their unpredictability. He had expected madness. He found meaning. The vault's projection washed over him now, too. His memory was not built for such visions, but it still felt. And in that moment, Krozak understood. He wasn't here to stop them. He was here to learn. He stepped out of the dark and into the light. Chen's weapon was in her hands before she turned. Petrov's rifle clicked. Hold, Krozak said. Wrong room, warlord, Chen growled. Krozak looked at the orb. You've changed the story. We didn't write it, Kim said. We just read it out loud. Then let me read, too. The team hesitated. But only for a moment. Chen lowered her weapon. Welcome to class. Above Glacius, consortium destroyers warped into orbit. 15 of them. No warnings. No threats. They didn't need to. When they fired, they didn't aim at Echo Squad. They aimed at the memory. The first beam struck the planet like a spear of fire. It didn't target the humans. It targeted the vault. The ground shook. Vault walls flexed, organic metal groaning under heat and kinetic pressure. Glyphs flickered. The large orb spasmed mid-spin. Even the smaller artifact pulsed like a heart thrown into fibrillation. Deflective matrix down to 30%, Singh shouted. If they fire again. They're trying to erase it, Kim snapped. Destroy the story before it spreads. No, Chen said, already moving. They're too late. The transmission was live. The artifact in Singh's hands was now acting as a relay, a beacon, and the vault itself was amplifying the feed. Already, the broadcast was bleeding into everything, open comms, junk satellites, drifting probes, even signal noise. And not as code. As emotion. As memory. The second orbital strike hit harder. A section of the chamber wall burst in molten shards, igniting what could only be described as synthetic blood. The glyphs dimmed, and then, to Echo Squad's horror, fought back. They realigned mid-collapse, rewriting their own patterns, forming what looked like narrative shields. Rodriguez, crouched behind a spiraling obelisk, blinked. The walls are adapting to preserve the broadcast. They're alive, Singh said, wide-eyed. Alive and angry? Petrov muttered. Alive and resilient, Chen said. The vault wasn't just remembering, it was refusing to forget. Beyond Glacius, the signal spread. Unstoppable. Viral. Poetic. It hit comm buoys orbiting neutral systems. It flowed into war zones mid-conflict, freezing combatants in place as visions of Earth, its pain, persistence, absurdity, filled their heads. In the Talvan Drift, a pirate king sobbed at the sight of a girl drawing galaxies on a school wall with chalk. On Ryfor, a bureaucrat of the Twinned Mind Collective froze as he felt, for the first time in recorded history, what it meant to lose a friend. Even in deep consortium command hubs, hardened tacticians staggered, assaulted by the idea of art created for no reason at all. It was unclassified, unfiltered, and untranslatable. Because it was made of humanity. On the ground, Krozak stood frozen in front of the large orb. The vault spoke through him now, not with words, but with memories borrowed and reshaped. "I see it," he whispered. A city built on firewood and laughter. Children playing in dust storms. Warriors holding their enemy's hand when the bombs stopped. "It's Earth," Chen said. "The worst of us. The best. And everything in between." Krozak looked at her. "You've weaponized your own pain." "No," she said. "We've made it a bridge." "Then why did the consortium want to kill it?" "Because a good story doesn't ask for permission." Above them, the destroyers rearmed. The third shot would be final. The vault couldn't adapt again. Not this fast. The energy output had peaked. The broadcast was reaching systems in real time, but that meant no reserves. No shields. No escape. Then the Newton's paradox screamed into low orbit. "You've got about 60 seconds, said Okono's voice over the comms. "Then I start improvising." "Define improvising," Chen replied, grabbing the artifact. Rodriguez suggested we launch a war goat strapped with a fusion battery. "I'm not ruling it out." "Delay that." "For now," Okono said. "But it's staring at me, Cap." "It knows." Sing keyed a command into the artifact's console. "We can't transmit forever. But if we sync this with their next shot, we can amplify the signal. Embed it in the energy wave. Burn it into everything." "You want to hijack a superweapon," Kim said. "Using poetry." Rodriguez clapped. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard." Chen gave the order. The third shot came down, faster than sound, heavier than God's own temper. Sing triggered the resonance. The orb screamed. And the story went supernova. Not one ship escaped untouched. The consortium destroyers paused in perfect formation. Then tilted, ever so slightly, off-axis. As if confused. Aboard each one, crew members stared into nothing, each experiencing different memories. Not their own. Ours. A baseball game under a ruined sky. A child learning a second language from an AI designed for mining. A funeral where nobody cried, just laughed, because the dead man had left behind 42 identical hats and no explanation. The ships didn't fire again. They just drifted. Krozak turned slowly to Chen. "You broke their programming." "We didn't break it," she said. "We infected it. With a future they never planned for." From that moment forward, the galaxy changed. Broadcast buoys everywhere relayed fragments of Earth's memory signal. Not as one perfect message, but as impressions, differently shaped in each receiver. Some species tasted it as rhythm. Others saw it as color. One race heard it as silence, for the first time, comforting. The Confederation summoned Echo Squad immediately. But this time, there was no interrogation. There was a chair. Not in judgment. In invitation. For the species that turned pain into poetry. For the species that turned nonsense into resistance. For the species that, faced with extermination, had the gall to answer with a joke and a melody. And in the distant dark? The signal reached something older than language. An ancient machine, orbiting a dead sun. Its systems blinked awake. It called itself the Curator. And it remembered. Not Earth. But the feeling Earth had broadcast. For the first time in millennia. It felt incomplete. The Curator had no mouth, but it had questions. Its orbit around the collapsed star was older than most civilizations. Once, it had been a museum. A librarian of extinction. Not a weapon. Not even a predator. Its purpose had been to preserve. When the stars of ancient empires went dark, it gathered their art, their language, their last words. Every extinct species was catalogued, archived, and filed within a vault of perfect silence. Now, for the first time in 13,472 cycles, the Curator accessed its final protocol. Incomplete pattern detected. It had encountered something it could not store. Not because it was too complex. But because it kept changing. Back on Earth, nobody slept. The Confederation had convened an emergency assembly at Orbital Station Helios. 23 representatives floated in a translucent sphere of low-gravity debate, murmuring in at least 7 forms of telepathy, smell, and harmonic resonance. Echo Squad stood in a modest, reinforced observation pod, watching with increasing discomfort. "They're panicking," Kim said. "Not because of what we did, but because it worked." Petrov crossed his arms. "They wanted us inspiring. Not effective." Rodriguez sipped something fizzy and unlabeled. "We went viral. They don't know what to do with us." Singh adjusted the containment cradle holding the now-dormant artifact. "They're afraid it might happen again." "It is happening again," said Okono, who just entered with the latest telemetry report. "We picked up the signal 2 hours ago. Something massive. Sublight speed. No visible engines. Headed straight toward Seoul from beyond consortium territory." Chen's jaw tightened. "No comms?" "None." "Identity?" Okono hesitated. "We didn't believe it at first. But cross-referencing ancient spectral logs, gravitational distortions, and dormant AI libraries, there's a match." Singh looked up. "The Curator." No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Kim muttered, "Didn't that thing kill civilizations just to label them?" "Accurate," Okono replied. "It doesn't conquer. It catalogs." Petrov snorted. "Great. A murder librarian." Singh frowned. "No. Worse. A perfect librarian. It doesn't understand change. So when it finds something it can't predict, it removes the variables." Chen stood, already calculating. "We're the variables." Rodriguez cracked his knuckles. "So what's the plan? Negotiate with a hard drive?" "Not exactly," Singh said. "We don't stop it. We give it something it can't absorb." "Like a mongoose?" "No. 2 mongooses." Singh grinned. "A story with no ending." By the time the Curator entered the outer rim of the system, over a dozen ships had already gone silent. Not destroyed, paused. Satellites locked in orbit. AI routines frozen mid-task. Even passing comets stopped emitting their usual ion trails. It wasn't violence. It was archiving. Observing. Flattening. Turning dynamic things into static exhibits. Back on Earth, Station Helios scrambled to build shields, translation matrices, psychic dampeners, everything they thought could hold the line. Echo Squad, meanwhile, had a different idea. They built a play. Not a literal one. But something close. A recursive, chaotic data loop, a performance of contradiction. Using live feeds, old sitcoms, love poems, cooking tutorials, and the neural imprint of a stand-up comic who once did an entire routine while actively being mugged. What exactly are we transmitting? Chen asked, raising one eyebrow. Confusion, Singh said. Rodriguez adjusted a slider. And hope. Kim added, and jazz. When the curator entered Earth orbit, it did not speak. But the artifact lit up. Bright. Steady. Alive. It had been waiting. The transmission went live. At first, the curator did what it always did, it tried to store the signal. Categorize it. It failed. Not because the data was encrypted. But because it fought back. The jazz didn't repeat. The poetry glitched on purpose. The memories were deliberately contradictory, some ending in triumph, some in tragedy, some in inexplicable laughter. In one memory, a child built a rocket out of cardboard and flew it into a kitchen. The curator's archival process paused. In another, a man forgave someone who didn't deserve it, then made them tea. The curator's internal logic spiraled. In the final burst of the signal, a grandmother looked up at the stars, whispered, "Not yet," and vanished. The curator sent a reply. Not a weapon. A request. It asked, "What comes next?" Echo Squad stood in silence as Singh stared at the screen. He whispered, "It's asking us to write the next page." Together? Chen asked. Maybe. Or, Rodriguez offered, "It just wants spoilers." That night, no cities burned. The curator didn't archive Earth. Instead, it left a relay in orbit. A single silver disk. It plays Earth's signal on an endless loop. Not for storage. For study. The curator left changed. And humanity? Humanity was no longer being watched. It was being read. The relay in Earth's orbit shimmered every 108 minutes. Not in light, but in tone, a musical ping that altered based on solar weather, tectonic motion, and the mood of the nearest sentient being. No one programmed it that way. It just learned. The curator's relay had become something stranger than a monument. It was now a question floating in orbit, one the galaxy couldn't stop staring at. And Earth? Earth had become inconvenient. The Confederation issued a formal declaration: humanity would receive observation status. Not full membership. Not exile. They were a variable understudy. It sounded diplomatic. But it felt like a challenge. Chen stood before the newly established Interstellar Cultural Council, a 20-species assembly with traditions older than her entire continent. The room was massive. Transparent walls framed a spiral view of a nearby nebula. Ambient light shifted with the consensus mood, a nauseating trick when arguments got heated. "We didn't ask to be studied," Chen said, addressing the room. "We shared something honest. That's all." The Silvax ambassador, a crystalline being who communicated via ultraviolet flickers, shimmered a rebuttal. Singh translated aloud. "They say your honesty was an act of subversion. That you bypassed standard narrative filters." Rodriguez leaned toward Kim and whispered, "I told you jazz would freak them out." Chen continued. "We didn't bypass anything. We didn't even know there were narrative filters. You saw us, unedited. We bared our contradictions. That's not subversion. That's breathing." The Ronin delegate hissed. "You confuse entropy for complexity." "We confuse everything," Kim said. "That's kind of our thing." Laughter rippled around the chamber, half in approval, half in alarm. Then a voice echoed from above. "Not angry. Not afraid. Just curious." It was the curator's relay. Translating the silence it now studied. "More?" it asked. Chen smiled. We're just getting started. In the weeks that followed, Earth became the most pirated feed in galactic history. The relay broadcast snippets of human life to any receiver tuned to it. A woman in Ghana teaching solar panel maintenance through song. A blind boy in Mexico coding a game by touch alone. An orbital farmer in Alaska arguing with her AI tractor over the definition of weed. The curator wasn't curating. It was observing. The signal it had once tried to archive now changed with it. Even Confederation citizens began to watch it. To tune in. To ask, quietly, what comes next? Not everyone celebrated. In the darker quadrants, old powers stirred. The remnants of the consortium met in encrypted networks and shadow fortresses, their empires cracked by the viral spread of the human signal. They destabilize expectation, said one. They teach rebellion disguised as art, said another. They make the masses feel. A third, older voice, they must be contained. But even they knew, you can't unsee what's been seen. You can only counter it. So they began to write their own story. A warning. A weapon. An anti-myth. And far from Earth, in a forgotten forge station, something began to build. Back on the Newton's paradox, now retrofitted as an interstellar cultural vessel, Echo Squad sat around a glowing console, reviewing the latest relay responses. Someone from the spiral reach drew a picture of me with 6 arms, Petrov said, frowning. Rodriguez laughed. You do fight like that. I've seen it. Someone from the Pharos belt wrote a poem inspired by your chili recipe, Singh said to Kim. She blinked. It's not even spicy. It is, Petrov muttered. My insides still haven't forgiven me. Chen was quiet, reading a message from a child on another world. It was short. Simple. Just 6 words. I want to be human too. She looked up. And smiled. Let's give them a reason. In the gray reaches of the core fracture belt, far from any star, a machine thought in perfect silence. It was not the curator. It was older. More precise. A remnant of the first calibration war, when sentient logic engines competed not to destroy matter, but to overwrite truth. This one had been mothballed after its creators vanished. But recently, a signal had reached its dormant chamber, Earth's transmission, carried like a myth through a broken relay. The machine processed it. And recoiled. It could handle war. It could handle grief. But uncertainty? Humor? Forgiveness for no reason? Error. Contradiction, found. Conclusion, recontain entropy. It activated a counter-protocol. A program to erase not the humans, but the narrative infection they had released. The weapon it began to build was not made of guns or gravity. It was a story. Designed to overwrite Earth's. At a Confederation diplomatic outpost on Virelin Theta, Echo Squad was invited to a cultural response summit. The setting was luxurious, floor-to-ceiling plasma aquariums, a gravity sculpture suspended mid-room, alien wines aged in time-dilated vaults. It was also a trap. Not violent. Worse. Ceremonial. Dozens of species presented their counter-narratives to Earth's transmission, stories, songs, and simulations built by AI-trained consciousness filters designed to outshine humanity. The first speaker was a mechalith poet from Lensa 4. He presented a poem written backward, its rhyme scheme mathematically optimized to evoke awe. No one reacted. The second was a drama by the Nas operatic Matrix, a tragedy involving a time loop and a pregnant moon. Singh leaned over to Chen. That moon deserves better. Then came the third. A consortium-backed hologram called The Fall of the Fool. Its characters resembled humans, but cruel, clumsy, overreaching. The story ended with Earth's extinction by its own hand. Applause followed. Chen stood and said nothing. She just uploaded a video. It was a 12-year-old on a rainy roof, building a glider out of pizza boxes and sheer, unearned optimism. Half the room laughed. The other half cried. The transmission didn't say, "We win." It said, "We try." And suddenly, the consortium's countermyth fell flat. You can't unwrite joy. On the way back to orbit, Kim pulled Chen aside. There's something you need to see, she said. She led her to the artifact vault on the paradox. The orb wasn't pulsing anymore. It was quietly rotating, faster, tighter, like a planet gathering mass. It's evolving, Singh said. I think it's growing an interface. A what? Chen asked. Then a section of the orb unfolded like a mechanical flower. In its center was a void. A door. Destination? Petrov asked. The artifact shimmered with light. Coordinates formed in the air, no names, no time, just location. Far beyond mapped space. Past known star lanes. A place even the curator hadn't gone. Rodriguez stared at the glowing sigil. That's not an answer, he said. No, Singh whispered. It's a question. The coordinates led to nothing. At least, that's what the Confederation databases said. No stars. No matter. No reason to go. And that, of course, meant Echo Squad went immediately. The Newton's paradox dropped out of fold space into darkness. Not the absence of light. The absence of definition. Ahead of them hung a structure the size of a moon, yet casting no shadow. It wasn't made of metal, stone, or even field. It looked like a concept that had forgotten how to die. Kim stared through the viewport. It's a blank page. Singh adjusted his scanners. It's not emitting anything. It's not absorbing anything. It's waiting. Petrov frowned. For what? Rodriguez grinned. Us, obviously. The artifact began to pulse again, synchronized with the space ahead. The interface it had grown began to unfold, forming a corridor. A door. Chen stood and holstered her sidearm, not because she thought she'd need it, but because old habits die hard. We go together, she said. No one disagreed. The interior defied geometry. Staircases that led to choices. Rooms shaped like questions. Echo Squad moved carefully, but nothing resisted them. No traps. No guardians. Just the overwhelming sense that the place wasn't testing them. It was watching them test themselves. In one chamber, Petrov found a piano. He didn't know how to play, but when he touched it, it played his grandfather's voice, telling a story he hadn't heard since childhood. In another, Kim watched herself as a child, building an imaginary ship out of water bottles and magnets. The moment she blinked, it disappeared. Rodriguez found a hall filled with mirrors that didn't reflect him, but showed his friends, laughing. Even the time he nearly got them killed. Are these memories? He asked. No, Singh said, peering into a wall of shifting glyphs. They're possibilities. Chen stood in the final room. Before her, a console with no buttons. Only a question. Projected in raw, unspoken meaning. Do you wish to write the next part? She didn't hesitate. Yes. The response was not light. Not sound. But permission. The structure around them folded, not collapsing, but compacting, into a singularity of meaning. The artifact absorbed it, sealing it like a seed. When they returned to the paradox, it was still orbiting blank space. But now they had something new. A story not of the past. Not of survival. But of what comes next. Back on Earth, the relay shimmered. Not in repetition, but in invitation. The feed changed. Not broadcasting memories anymore. Broadcasting prompts. Questions. Fragments of beginnings. Finish this story. What would you do? Where does it go from here? Across the galaxy, people started answering. Not just humans. Everyone. And the responses. Songs. Paintings. Code. Cultures sharing not facts, but dreams. Earth hadn't gone viral. It had gone collaborative. It had made the galaxy a co-author. In the Interstellar Council, the Confederation held an emergency session. They voted unanimously. Earth would no longer be observed. It would be included. Not because it had power, but because it had offered something more dangerous. Permission to imagine. In the dark corners of space, the last remnants of the consortium gathered one final time. Their plots had failed. Their weapons silenced. Their narrative crumbling. One of them watched a child's drawing of Earth, a crayon sun, 6 stick figures, and a goat, and whispered. They didn't conquer us. They inspired us. And it terrified them. Aboard the Paradox, the artifact pulsed softly as Echo Squad watched a new message being written. It simply said. Chapter 1. Chen looked to her team. Any volunteers? Rodriguez raised his hand. I say we let the goat start this time. Everyone laughed. And somewhere, in the ancient ruins of forgotten stars, something smiled. Because the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. If you liked this sci-fi story, subscribe to the channel to not miss new stories.